Hello and welcome to TopGear India. We're on the outskirts of Udaipur with the all-new and much-awaited Honda Elevate. Now, why does the Honda Elevate exist? Well, it's about time Honda actually made a proportionate SUV. Ever since it introduced the CR-V, there was clearly a fan base for Honda SUVs, but then Honda didn't seem to take itself too seriously for the longest time. It did come with the WR-V and the BR-V, but that was up against pretty stiff competition. So it was only a matter of time before Honda finally engineered an SUV. And it's finally here. Who are the key rivals that the Honda Elevate goes up against? Well, it's mainly the Hyundai Creta and the Maruti Suzuki Grand Vitara. In my opinion at least. The Creta mainly because it's the highest selling SUV in its segment, and the Grand Vitara because I think it's the new up and coming to be highest selling SUV in the segment. Now, Honda put a lot of emphasis on how much time they spent in designing this vehicle, in preparing this vehicle, and in sort of planning it. Since it's the one that came out in year 2023, it's had a lot of time to plan, learn from the competition, and implement certain changes and things accordingly. So the main target demographic that Honda is looking at is somewhere between the age of about 25 to about 50 years old. And it's essentially looking at families that are full-size families. So the car has been designed for the family man or the family woman in mind. So with that in mind, let's go over the Honda Elevate one by one and let's see if all of our wait has been worth it and if Honda has actually come up with potentially the best SUV in its class. Now, we're normally used to seeing Honda cars that have come before this be quite cutting, low to the ground. This is quite a departure from that. This is shaped like a brick in comparison. It's got a very high bonnet line. It's almost up to my hip, and the front over here is very flat. Now, you might be wondering what the hell happens to pedestrian safety over here. This looks like it would spat any pedestrian on the way. But let me tell you, Honda put a lot of emphasis on what they've done to actually make this car quite safe. So if you walk into a Honda dealership and you ever touch the panels and you think, oh no, this is shit build quality. Well, you're very wrong, because Honda has done this intentionally. So imagine if I was a pedestrian and I get hit by an Elevate. This is supposed to absorb the impact so I don't break my legs. Similarly with the hood over here, if you can see with the hand, it actually presses in. This is not a sign of cheap build quality. It's actually implemented with the intention that in case a pedestrian lands over here, it absorbs the impact and doesn't let the pedestrian's head take the impact, thereby making sure that at least you don't kill the person that you accidentally hit, which I think is very clever. It's very thoughtful, and I hope people don't misinterpret this for poor build quality, because this is actually really thoughtful. Now, coming back to the design over here, I think this looks really attractive, especially when you see it in person. It's quite a lot of presence over here. I love what Honda has done with the hood. The headlamp design over here, again, I like how the low beam and the high beam are. The DRLs to me could have been slightly better. In fact, the chrome normally reflects more than the DRLs do, so that is something. But apart from that, I really like the look of the front. Now let's come along the side and I'll tell you a bit more about that. Now on the side over here, I do think that the Honda Elevate does look quite muscular. It does have a certain amount of presence to go with the side. It isn't exactly the jazziest looking side, but it does the job. You've got a pair of 17-inch wheels over here. This design over here is spot on, if not very similar to what you find on the Honda City. And I would have liked a different design perhaps, but it's okay. I mean, it's not a bad design. It's just I've seen better designs from Honda. So come along the side over here, and the rear 3/4 to me for some reason looks a lot like what you'd find in the previous Creta. I don't know why. If you just hid the logo on the wheel and you just showed me the 3/4, it'd be very hard to tell if this was an Elevate or a Seltos, at least to me at this point. Now you come along the rear over here and you've essentially got LED tail lamps over here too. The beam over here is a reflector. Actually, it's not a tail light, so it's not going to be one thing. But I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of people in Karol Bagh that are actually going to do this. The tail lamp design, it's very simple, it's very sleek. It's also very similar to a lot of other cars that have a very similar design. But it is what it is. All in all, I think that the Honda Elevate does look like a very smart, very upmarket looking car without being too flashy. It seems subtle and reserved with its styling, but premium and upmarket enough. Alright, so while I'm at it, let me tell you a bit more about the boot capacity. Now, this has about 458 liters of boot capacity over here, and underneath you also get a 16-inch spare wheel over here. It's not a full-size wheel. It's in fact not even the same tire. On the outside you have Bridgestone tires. The spare wheel is on a pair of Goodyear tires, but it's a spare wheel, so it's supposed to just get you from a place where you can actually change the tire. The boot now actually is supposed to be one of the widest in the segment, and I see why, at least in this area over here. If you avoid the wheel well, it is quite wide and it is quite practical. I just wish that it had a flatter sort of loading thing. There's a bit of a depth to it, but yeah, I think that's something you can get used to. So all in all, practical, seems like it. Now let's step on the inside and see what the interior is like. Alright, so now in the back seat of the Honda Elevate, and the driver is set to my driving position, and it's quite roomy actually. It's surprisingly roomy. I've got enough amount of knee room, more than I'd want. There is sufficient amount of headroom, though here's the problem. If I move to the right and I sit a bit to the corner, like if I was sitting with 5 people and I was sitting 5 abreast here, you see my head over here, it's touching the top. But if I stay here, then I have about this much headroom. So yeah, I think if you're planning to sleep in the car, you can just lock your head in here and you won't really move a lot. I guess there's some silver lining to it. But apart from that, it's a comfortable place. The seats are well bolstered. They're stiff enough, so on longer distances, you wouldn't feel fatigue. I like the recline angle, though you cannot change the recline any further. Alright, you get a nice little armrest over here, though I would have wished it stopped here so that my arm could rest properly, but instead it goes here. Again, minor gripe over here. I like the leather quality that Honda's used. Now you get a 60-40 split over here. And all in all, it's a nice place. You got a nice big window over here. The only thing maybe some people might complain about is that there's no panoramic sunroof. But quite frankly speaking, I don't think it's necessary. When I was looking at the photos that Honda shared about the chassis and how they've straightened the chassis further to make the car a bit more robust, they mentioned how they've passed beams connecting either side of the pillars all the way over here. So that's probably one of the reasons why they did not incorporate a panoramic sunroof. I think if I had to choose between overall safety and rigidity versus a panoramic sunroof, I'd probably pick overall rigidity, because how often do you even use the panoramic sunroof? Let's be honest, especially in Mumbai in summer, you're probably keeping that closed anyway. So it's okay, it's a minor gripe. You have no USB charging sockets here in the back, which is a bit of downer. It's a family car, you probably have your kids in the back, they probably want to charge their phones or your friends. You get a 12-volt charging socket over here. There's no Type-C charging sockets anywhere around here, which is a bit, I don't know what Honda is doing. It's 2023. At least they should have given one in here, but no charging sockets. You got decent amount of cubby space over here, and yeah, that's the interior, the back seat in a nutshell. Now let's get to the front seat and talk about what the front is like and drive this car. Now the front seat of the Elevate is actually quite nice. For a change in a Honda, you get to sit elevated over the road, and that's probably where the name came from. And the interior is nice. I really like this mocha brown color leather choice. I'm glad they didn't go for a beige or a black. They have a little bit of wood insert over here, which also looks quite rich and premium. I like the choice of materials. You have a bit of black, a bit of brushed aluminium, leather. I like how they all come together. It makes the car feel a lot more charming and appealing, so to say. So now you get the same cockpit over here that you do get in the Honda City. You've got a part digital, part analog display, and it's quite smartly done. I still don't know why they have the RPM as digital and the speed as analog. It should have been the other way around in my opinion, but it is what it is. You get a nice big screen over here. Again, the quality is quite nice. It's quite clear. It's quite readable. And all in all, this is very nice. Honda put a lot of emphasis on how they've increased the lumbar support in the car. So when you spend time in traffic or on highways where they expect this car to be spending majority of its time, it's actually quite comfortable for the driver. They also said that they've bolstered the seats and used a specific kind of gel underlining for the seats, so that despite how well the suspension is tuned, the seats themselves also absorb a certain level of bumps, thereby increasing your comfort all that more. I'm yet to drive the car, so I will confirm that when I'm driving it. But so far, all in all, the interior is quite impressive. We're driving the manual right now. So yeah, you got a nice little knob over here that you can hold. And you got two Type A charging sockets over here, no Type C. You got a wireless charging socket, and you get a 12-volt charging socket over here. There is a nice little storage space over here. It's not too deep, it's not that big. It's like yay wide and yay deep, so not that much. There is no ventilated seats. There is no automatic adjustment for seat. It's completely manually done. There's no cool glove box also, for that matter. So I think Honda skipped out on a lot of things in order to be able to put that money elsewhere. Either that, or either they're planning to price it very aggressively. Alright, that's the Honda Elevate in a nutshell. Now let's drive this car and see what it's like. Alright, let me tell you a bit about the driving experience on the Honda Elevate. Now if you look around, we actually drove along these trails and these twisty roads. We didn't exactly get a lot of time on the highway. So a lot of elevations, a lot of change in elevations. And so I can only tell you what the car is like to drive around these twisty roads with a full capacity of people sitting inside the car with luggage in the back. So ideal road trip conditions. Now, in that regard, I think generally I did find the engine struggling a bit, especially when I was going uphill. I did have to find myself carrying some momentum. So if I didn't have the momentum, I would have to slot back down to first gear. But if I did have the momentum, then I could comfortably stay in second gear. I wouldn't go as far as third gear. But yeah, that. Now the gearbox in typical Honda fashion is quite smooth, easy to shift. The clutch is a bit heavy, but that's okay. I think it just takes a bit of getting used to. I wish that the pedals were finished in aluminium. It would actually look much better. It would have looked a bit more upmarket, but it's just rubber, and that's okay, I guess. That's a minor gripe. The steering feel is actually nice. The ride quality is the one thing that truly stands out. Now the engine is quite high revving. You feel like, okay, you know, at 3000 RPM, 4000 RPM, I have more than enough that I need. But you can continue ringing it all the way, and the engine actually sounds pretty nice when you rev it past 4000 RPM all the way to 5000. Now the brakes are actually quite decent. I didn't have any problem with them so far. I wasn't going very fast around these roads because they were quite twisty. But the brakes did perform quite well, and I don't have any problems with the tire too, including off-road. Surprisingly, didn't lose grip all that much. With a full capacity of passengers inside, it still managed to climb a lot of steep hills, and that was genuinely surprising to me. This boasts of the highest ground clearance in the segment, and I wish it also would have come with all-wheel drive. I think that would have further extended its capabilities and just what it can do. That being said, the front-wheel drive does just fine. It's not that bad. What I did notice while coming off-road is that, remember I was talking about the panels earlier? So when you rub up against plants, you can really hear it a lot. Like you can hear tiny plants hitting against the outside, the doors, the bottom, the side skirts, and it is surprisingly audible. Now, as quiet as this car generally is, you can hear the outside every now and then, especially if something makes contact with the car. Which I think is a good thing if you want to be on the lookout for, oh, if someone bumped into my car, but a bad thing if you actually don't want to hear tiny leaves or plants rustling against your car. But that being said, I am quite happy with the driving experience so far. We drove the manual over here, and again, the manual was nice. I unfortunately didn't get the time to drive the CVT. We will have to conduct a proper road test when we're back in Bombay with it, and I think I would like to do that because over there we can actually test it on the highway, on our Mumbai-Pune expressway or our highways, to see how it comes across and deals with bumpy highways at higher speeds, because the entire drive today that I had was at much lower speeds than I would like. The current fuel efficiency figures I got was about 7 kilometers per liter, which is not all that great. But to be fair, I was driving around twisty roads with a lot of elevation changes. Had I been driving on the highway, I'm sure that this engine would perform a lot better and be a lot more efficient. So we'll have to wait till we get back to Bombay, and yeah. Alright, so that sums up the driving experience on the Honda Elevate. Let's move along now, maybe take in the scenery and get to the final verdict. Alright, before we proceed ahead, a big shout out to Total Energies. Thank you for sponsoring this video. And with that, let's finally bring you the verdict, and let me tell you what I think about the Honda Elevate as a nutshell, in a nutshell. So if you notice, we've come up here on a bit of an elevation so that we can see the view. And coming up here in the Honda Elevate was quite an alleviating experience, so to say. It was fun. There were a few times I thought the car wouldn't make it, but it actually didn't seem that hard for it. It actually made it in here with quite ease. Even though it was packed with 4 people, sometimes climbing uphill can be a bit of a challenge with the engine. You will have to either slot down to the first gear or carry momentum. So those are the only 2 gripes I noticed while trying to drive it uphill. But otherwise, so far, it was a very comfortable experience, especially when you go off-road, low speed bumps. It takes it very smoothly. In fact, like my colleague Pratik also pointed out, this car will spoil you to the point that you will reconsider the kind of experience you might be having with any other car in the segment. So all in all, if I do have any gripes, I would say yes, the engine could use a little bit more power. And if you're using it primarily for cruising, you wouldn't exactly have that problem. But if you are going to be touring a lot and you'd want something that excites you, then you'd probably want a bit more punch out of it. But the kind of experience that Honda creates and curates for its customers, it's the kind that makes most of those customers come back. Existing Honda City customers have gone ahead and bought the next generation of the City, or some of them have even gone to the Civic, RIP. But you know, I think a lot of them will gravitate towards this because they're so used to that Honda experience and being part of that Honda ecosystem. Now, is there anything in particular that it does better than its competitors? I'm not so sure actually. The ride quality, yes, to me the comfort is something that stands out for sure, but it doesn't outperform them. It doesn't have the swankiest of features on the inside. I mean, it's pretty feature loaded, but it doesn't exactly outdo them. The music system is, it's quite subpar for that matter. The visibility, it's nice, but this hood actually creates a bit of a problem. But I think it's the other things that it does just that well in a Honda way. In the sense, I believe the service network and the kind of service experience you'll have will be quite relaxed. The ride quality is something that stands out. The ease of use and how easy it is to drive the car, I think all of that accumulates together to make it its own experience. Do I think that this car is right in time? No. I think this car should have been out probably a year or a year and a half ago. It's taken them a while. I think around that time this would have been right in the place. But now when everyone's gravitating towards hybrids and strong hybrids, I think Honda is missing out on a bit over there, especially given the fact that they have just one engine option available. They might have two gearbox options, but just one engine option available, while everybody else is offering petrol, diesel, turbocharged, naturally aspirated, strong hybrid, mild hybrid, or even electric for that matter. Honda is just, I think, a bit too late to the game. They might be well dressed, but they're a bit late to the party. So I think, with that being said, I think they still can garner a lot of customers, and I will have to actually wait in time to see how this car is. And I think the main thing that's going to put this whole package into perspective is the pricing. I would hope that Honda prices this quite aggressively so that this is a more digestible package for a lot of people. But if the pricing tends to be higher than the competitors, I think that would be quite a hard sell for Honda. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked the video, please let us know in the comment section below. If you didn't like the video, then don't bother. But yeah, let us know what you think about the Honda Elevate and how do you think it stacks up against the Maruti Suzuki Grand Vitara or the Creta for that matter. In terms of looks, in terms of driving, I definitely think this is better than the Creta for me, but I think we'll have to put them in a comparison together to find out. So stick around to the Top Gear India YouTube channel for that video to drop. Thank you so much.